can barely survive. America is too expensive. Republicans have broken our healthcare system and unleashed the unfortunate and painful reality that millions of Americans are about to experience dramatic increases in their healthcare premiums, copays, and deductibles. Millions of families will incur thousands of dollars in additional healthcare costs a year when they are barely making it right now. Democrats are prepared to support a bipartisan spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, public safety, and economic well-being. But we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to rip away health care from the American people. Questions?
Do you consider a clean CR to be inadequate in that way?
In March, House Democrats strongly opposed the partisan Republican spending bill that hurt everyday Americans in a variety of ways, including making their health care more expensive. A continuing resolution that continues the failed policies of the Republican Party that we voted against is not the type of policy that actually meets the needs of the American people.
Leader, Donald Trump isn't letting go of his crime issue. He continues to talk about it, makes it the issue. Perhaps it'll be a huge issue in the midterms. Some new AP polling came out that showed that 68%, the majority of Democrats in large cities like New York, say that crime is a problem. 81% of all Americans believe that crime is a problem in large cities. So when you see Democrats out there, whether it's J.B. Pritzker or anyone else that say crime is down, we don't need to worry about it, is that out of touch?
I think Governor Pritzker is doing a tremendous job on behalf of the people in the great state of Illinois and is committed to continuing to drive crime down in Chicago, as Democrats are committed to driving crime down all across the United States of America. I mentioned that as House Democrats, we are prepared to support a bipartisan spending bill that meets the needs of the American people with a focus on three areas: their economic well-being, public safety, and health care. And in terms of public safety, we actually support restoring grants for local law enforcement that Donald Trump and House Republicans have cut. If they're serious about continuing to strengthen the relationship between the police and the community and driving crime down, then Republicans should be prepared, in the context of this spending agreement that we are in the process of dealing with, to restore grants to support local police departments that they themselves have cut.
Are there any crime bills in the 13 that are being marked up today that you would support?
I haven't taken a look at those crime bills, but if they're going to be partisan messaging bills designed to distract from the fact that Republicans have now realized that their one big ugly bill is a complete and total disaster, and so they want to change the name of the one big ugly bill and change the conversation, then no, Democrats are not going to support partisan bills that are simply designed to distract the American people from the fact that Republican policies under Donald Trump and House Republicans have been a complete and total failure. And the American people now clearly know it, which is why the Republicans are in a panic trying to gerrymander maps all over the country and rebrand their one big ugly bill because it is so deeply unpopular throughout the land.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris wrote in a book excerpt that's out this morning that the decision for President Joe Biden to drop out should have been more than a personal decision. Do you agree with that sentiment? Is it helpful for her to continue to talk about this after the fact?
I haven't read the excerpt. I look forward to reading the book in its entirety, so I'm not in a position to comment, having not read the excerpt and certainly not having read the book. Joe Biden made the correct decision not to seek re-election.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. A growing number of House Democrats are expressing support for certain provisions in Trump's budget bill, whether that's no taxes on tips or World Cup funding or funding nuclear radiation funds. Would you encourage members to continue touting some of these provisions, and does it at all muddy the
What budget bill?
messaging of,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, what budget bill, just for clarity, are you talking about? Are you talking about the one big ugly bill or what has been proposed?
Yes, what
Moving
you call the
forward.
one big ugly bill, does that muddy the messaging that you have on there if some members in your party are touting some of those provisions?
No.
I'm wondering if you could weigh in on the Walkinshaw victory and what it means for margins in the House, and depending upon when he's sworn in, negotiations over the next few weeks.
Well, we look forward to Representative-elect Walkinshaw being sworn in later on this evening. We welcomed him to the Democratic whip meeting this morning. It's another data point in a series of special elections where Democrats have consistently overperformed. James won that district by 50 points, which is, as far as I can tell, a 16-point overperformance of what was done at the presidential level last November, continuing the fact that on average, in special elections throughout this year, Democrats have overperformed the 2024 results by 15 points and flipping red seats blue all across the country, including in places like Iowa, Pennsylvania, and Nebraska. Go to the back.
Is the no endorsement of the New York City mayoral race an indication at all of what leadership might do in other primaries if an outside candidate wins, say, an Abdul El Said in Michigan?
I haven't been tracking the race in Michigan, and I certainly will have more to say about the New York City mayor's race in short order.
On healthcare, when you talk about, wanting to protect Americans' healthcare, drawing a red line, letting Republicans know that no partisan spending bill without healthcare protection won't be supported by Democrats, is that something that your members? It just seems as though there's members want different things from this particular negotiation. How are you as leader navigating all of the different, some folks want anti-impoundment language and no more rescissions. Some folks say healthcare is enough. Some folks say a clean CR that just keeps the government open is enough. How are you, given what happened in March, given, the Senate considerations, kind of from your perspective as we stand on September 10th, how are you thinking about your conversations, not just with Republicans on the other side of the aisle, but Democrats in your own caucus and Schumer? Just give us some insight into how you're approaching it.
We look forward to our conversation with Leader Schumer and Democratic leaders in the Senate later on this afternoon as we enter into a more intense phase around the spending showdown in advance of the end of the fiscal year. Democrats broadly agree on two things. One, Republicans have launched an extraordinary and unprecedented attack on the health care of the American people. Extraordinary and unprecedented attack. Ending Medicaid as we know it. Setting in motion the closure of hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based clinics all across the country, including disproportionately in rural America. More than 20 million Americans are likely to confront skyrocketing healthcare premiums, copays, and deductibles because of the Republican refusal to extend the tax subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. As a result of the Republican one big ugly bill, Medicare is facing a $536 billion cut at the end of this year. And on top of all of that, Republicans are now trying to jam down the throats of the American people an appropriations bill that was just voted out of the Labor H subcommittee and then the Appropriations Committee that represents an all-out attack on public health, on medical research, on vaccines, and on the Centers for Disease Control. An all-out attack on health care is what we are in the midst of right now. Every single Democrat stands against that and believes it is important at this moment because of the extraordinary attack on health care and the fact that it is a cost of living issue. Housing and health care being the two most expensive parts of day-to-day life for everyday Americans, that we cannot, under any circumstances, support a partisan Republican bill that continues to rip health care away from the American people. I believe that's a consensus position that brings together progressives, New Dems, Blue Dogs, Battleground members, and all points in between. Thanks. Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Leader. Just to piggyback off of Michael's question there, I just wanted to ask you too, I think it's very true that many of your Democratic members agree on that healthcare position. I would argue Senate Democrats do as well. However, there's still a lot of members within your caucus who just want to use this moment of funding as a fight. They really just want to see more energy there. And I know Republicans over on the House side may not need Democratic votes here. There's a lot of mistrust, it seems, with a lot of House Democrats, with Senate Democrats. They want to see the Senate react in a way that's very different from March. I know you have that meeting, you mentioned it today. But how are you trying to assuage even those concerns, that eagerness from a lot of members?
Well, we look forward to our meeting later on this afternoon, which is part of a continuing series of meetings that we've held with Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last several months. And I expect that coming out of the meeting, you'll continue to see a strong and unified position. Every single Democrat in the House and the Senate voted against the Republican one big ugly bill. Why? Because the one big ugly bill hurt everyday Americans in order to reward their billionaire donors. The one big ugly bill ripped away health care from millions of Americans, stole food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans, and all of it was done to reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. It's the reason why the one big ugly bill is so deeply unpopular, and Donald Trump, who supposedly is the king of branding, has walked away from his own branding. Every single Democrat in the House and the Senate voted against that one big ugly bill, and we will continue to speak out against it. And Republicans are now hiding under a rock. They're in the witness protection program as it relates to their signature piece of legislation. And so I believe that all of us are ready to continue the fight. And healthcare being right at the top of that list. But the fight, of course, is about all of the things, all of the extremism, the parade of horribles that Donald Trump has unleashed on the American people and their failed promises to make life more affordable.
Mr. Leader, just on foreign affairs, just really quickly want to get your reaction to this Israeli strike in Doha, if you've had any briefings about that, any concerns, and also this incident with Poland shooting down a Russian drone.
America's falling apart, and as we now see all across the world, things are falling apart on the global stage because there's an absence of leadership coming from the Republican Party, an absence of leadership from Donald Trump, and cult-like behavior from House Republicans who simply rubber-stamp this extreme failed agenda. In terms of the Middle East, what we need to do is simple. Hostages need to be freed. humanitarian assistance needs to be surged into Gaza immediately and continuously so that we can alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which is unconscionable. And then, of course, we need to find a clear path to a just and lasting peace, which means restoring the ceasefire that has been broken on Donald Trump's watch. Donald Trump inherited a ceasefire from President Biden that he supposedly supported, and it's been broken on Donald Trump's watch. We need to stand by our ally in Poland, a NATO nation, and an attack on one of us, pursuant to Article 5, is an attack on all of us. We need to stand by Poland. At what point will Donald Trump come to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin is not a friend of the United States? He's not a friend of Western democracy. He's not a friend of the NATO alliance or the free world. He's an enemy. At what point will Donald Trump realize that? And at what point will House Republicans stop bending the knee to this wannabe dictator and start acting like a separate and co-equal branch of government and speak up on the issues that they themselves previously supported, which is standing against Vladimir Putin and standing up for Ukraine, for democracy, for freedom, for truth, for our NATO allies like Poland and the free world.
Thank you, Leader. Wanted to get your reaction to this fatal stabbing of a woman on a train in North Carolina. The suspect in this case had an alleged rap sheet and a criminal history that's pretty extensive. I'm curious if you find this to be a wake-up call for how our justice system is releasing people into the streets that might be a threat.
It's a horrific incident, and our thoughts and prayers, heartfelt sentiments go out to the family. No family should ever experience anything like this. And by all accounts, the victim was a bright, vibrant, hopeful, optimistic person who was contributing to her community in Charlotte, and the sky was going to be the limit in terms of what her life would be like and how she was going to benefit others by continuing to shine brightly. It's a horrific situation, and we should continue to examine thoughtful and decisive ways to drive down crime in the United States of America. In my view, we have to support local law enforcement, not cut grants to local law enforcement, which is what House Republicans have done. Support local law enforcement, decisively surge resources into addressing mental illness, make sure we can get as many dangerous weapons off the street as possible, and find new and creative ways to secure the safety of the American people who take mass transportation. I grew up in Brooklyn taking mass transportation, beginning in the 6th grade. That's what people in New York do. There are no buses going back and forth to school. Beginning in the 6th grade, children taking trains, as I did, or buses to get back and forth to school. Children, that's what we do in New York City. So this is a personal issue. We definitely need to continue to do everything we can to safely secure the American people, but certainly to secure the American people who rely upon mass transportation to get to and from work, home, houses of worship, and beyond.
Thank you. Curtailing off of that topic of Irina Zarutska, who was tragically and horrifically murdered, I'm curious, it seems that it could have been completely preventable because this man who murdered her was arrested and released about 14 times. He had a mile-long rap sheet. because of soft on crime Democrat policies, it seems. I'm curious what Congress is prepared to do to really force judges to keep violent criminals locked up, or at least, for an appropriate length of time.
I think it's outrageous that people are trying to politicize the death of this wonderful young lady. It's outrageous that anyone would politicize their death. What decency do people have at a moment like this, as opposed to trying to find common sense solutions? One thing I can tell you that's also outrageous is that Donald Trump pardoned hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers. And the soft on crime Republican policy inherent in pardoning violent felons has resulted in people all across America subsequently being violently victimized by those January 6 violent felons who were released back into communities all across America. That's soft on crime Republican policies. How dare people try to politicize this tragedy right now? Last question.
Thanks, Leader Jeffries. You mentioned the ACA subsidies. Those don't expire, of course, till the end of the year. So do you see that as an issue that must be addressed this month? Is that one of the red line issues, or can that wait until later in the year?
In my view, there's an urgency to fixing our broken healthcare system and reducing costs for everyday Americans, including in the healthcare space. The open enrollment period begins in less than 2 months. It begins on November 1st. So this is one of many issues that should be addressed urgently by the United States Congress in terms of making sure we stop the effort to continue to rip health care away from the American people and lean into an effort to actually protect the health care of the American people. And that includes, but is not limited to, addressing the tax subsidy issue with respect to the Affordable Care Act. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Good job, Dave.